I want to pivot now to the controversy surrounding the Air Canada CEO. Michael Rousseau has been summoned to Ottawa over his message of condolence to the victims of this week's deadly tarmac collision in New York. The Committee of Official Languages wants to know why it was delivered entirely in English with the exception, though, of bonjour and merci. There were French subtitles, but Prime Minister Mark Carney says it's not acceptable.
As I just said, in a bilingual country, we proudly live in a bilingual country. And companies like Air Canada particularly have a responsibility to always communicate in both official languages, regardless of the situation. I'm very disappointed in, as others are, rightly so, in this unilingual message of the CEO of Air Canada. It doesn't matter the circumstance, but particularly in these circumstances, lack of judgment and lack of compassion.
Quebec members of the National Assembly are outraged. Some want the CEO fired. Cathy Senay is CBC's parliamentary correspondent at the Quebec National Assembly, and she joins us now. Cathy, in just under 4 minutes, the Air Canada CEO Michael Rousseau has set off a linguistic firestorm.
Yes, there's definitely a common sentiment here at the National Assembly: anger. So in a video talking about a tragedy at LaGuardia Airport in which 2 pilots died, including one from Quebec, Michael Rousseau spoke only 2 words in French, bonjour and merci. So for politicians, that makes Rousseau unfit to be the head of Air Canada. And this is not the first time. Remember back in November 2021, in his first major speech as Air Canada CEO, Rousseau delivered a 26-minute speech, but only spoke in French for 20 seconds. And when a reporter asked how he managed to live in Quebec's largest city for years without speaking the language, he couldn't answer in French. So he then promised to learn French, but Air Canada says his command of the language wasn't good enough to deliver a sensitive message like his condolences video. Some of the politicians at the National Assembly are asking for his resignation. That includes the 2 candidates in the CEQ leadership race, Christine Fréchette and Bernard Drinville, as well as Premier François Legault himself. Take a listen.
Je pense que si il ne parle pas français, il devrait démissionner.
I'm asking him to quit his job right now because he's not respecting our language, he's not respecting Quebecers.
For the family of the victim, and for all the Francophones of Canada, this is not acceptable. It's not the first time, it's not the second time, it's the minimum at the 3rd time. Game over.
The Parti Québécois leader, though, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, did not ask for Michael Rousseau to resign. What's he saying?
Well, basically, he's using the case to tout his political agenda, GP, because for the Parti Québécois, it shows that there will be always a lack of respect for the French language on the federal scene, even though it's one of the 2 official languages in Canada. And the party is now slamming Mark Carney, saying that he is maintaining the status quo. Take a listen.
To come out and say, oh, I'm so surprised, I don't understand what's going on, I'm disappointed. Michael Rousseau never learned French language after 5 years. What about him? What about the Liberal Party of Canada? It's pure hypocrisy, and at some point, I'm fed up.
So with a provincial election close on the horizon, the Parti Québécois says that Quebecers who want to see more respect for the French language should vote for independence.
Okay, of course they do.
Yeah.
Of course, that's what they're saying. All right, the CBC's Cathy Senay in Quebec City for us. Nice to see you, Cathy. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Let's turn back to the Power panel to get their take on this. Amanda Alvaro, Jordan Likeness, Tim Powers, and Sherelle Evelyn. Amanda, I was actually kind of struck by how hard Carney came down on the CEO today, right? Saying there was a lack of judgment. We heard in that clip that there was a lack of compassion after he gave this unilingual video as his statement on the crash. What do you make of what the Prime Minister had to say today on this?
Yeah, I think it reflected what a lot of people felt about that communication. It was a communication failure. There's no 2 ways about it. We're talking about a Quebec-based pilot whose family speaks French. This was supposed to be a message to them. It was a message about it. And to fail to speak in French, like, this is a cut video. This wasn't a live take.
Right.
You could even feed him some lines that he could deliver in French in order to, this is an airline that's supposed to be like a national airline, holds almost a virtual monopoly. All of their communication is in both languages. All instructions to passengers are in both languages, but their CEO can't deliver this very vital message to a pilot who was a French Canadian in both official languages. It really was disappointing, and it was a fail.
Tim, with a last name like Rousseau, you'd think he'd be what happened to this guy? He lives in Montreal. I think his wife is Francophone. He's been in this job for years, and he just can't get it together. I mean, it is hard to learn a language when you're an adult. Let's not be too hard on the guy. It is tough. But, to hold a position like that, to Amanda's point, when passengers sit through everything in both official languages, a flight attendant earning a fraction of what he earns has to speak the other official language in most cases. It's not great, right? It's
but there's a whole other audience called shareholders who want somebody who can run the business.
True.
And not necessarily the politics. Amanda and I both worked in crisis communication. I differ in a couple of perspectives from Amanda, but first of all, before I even get into that, I'd say there's a lot, let's call out the opportunism here and not just the bilingualism. Why is the Prime Minister, why are the Bloc so passionate about this right now? Why do they have to do this right now? There's a crash, people are dead. Why couldn't this be held off for a month? Why are they calling it right now? Because there's a by-election in Terrebonne. Okay, let's be frank about that. On the crisis communication, Amanda knows this, I know this, I'm sure Jordan's done some of this too. You respond as best you can, as quickly as you can with the facts and the information that you know. I think Mike Rousseau has not hidden the fact that French isn't his first language. It's not my first language either. I get the point about wanting to try to connect emotionally. And I take Amanda's point about maybe he could have read a few lines of French. But if that comes off as insincere, that can be as damaging to anything else here. I think it's fair to ask questions about his French competency, but I think this is more about the political environment, and shame on all the people that are jumping on this right now. That is not to take away from the importance of bilingualism in this country, but 2 people died. Many other people are injured. The first rule of crisis communication is get your leader out there and get him to speak. Try and address the things you can't. They did put subtitles in. They did put their communications out there. This is too much of a brouhaha about political opportunism.
Jordan, is it a bit crass for the Parti Québécois, the Bloc Québécois, maybe even the Prime Minister, to be focused on this issue as opposed to a really big tragedy that unfolded on LaGuardia Airport the other day? Is it legit? Or should we be talking about this and it's really...
Two things can be true.
Yeah, maybe both are true at the same time,
Two things can be true,
right?
JP.
Yeah.
For sure there's politics in this, but there is a real issue here. And I think, to Tim's point, it is true that in crisis communications, it's so important to get the correct information out quickly. But you also have to consider the context. And the context here is that this flight originated in Montreal. Many of the passengers were Francophone, many of the crew were Francophone, and one of the pilots who tragically lost their lives is also Francophone. Yeah, and exactly. In that context, it does matter very much that it be communicated in French in that context. And it also matters that Air Canada continues to be the #1 federally regulated institution that receives the most complaints about violations when it comes to bilingualism of all federally regulated institutions. It matters also that this particular CEO has a history of also dropping the ball on this. So all that context also goes into the mix here. And I don't think that the reaction would have been as negative if all those things were not the case, but they are. And so that being the case, it is very important, and I think Amanda makes a really good point, particularly when this was a set video piece that was pre-recorded. There's really no excuse for not having some French content in there that meaningfully addresses the tragedy that occurred. And I think that that is probably a very big lesson there in terms of crisis communication for other organizations in Canada as well.
I just want to, sorry, I was reading my computer while you were speaking because we just got a statement of sorts from Air Canada. Radio Canada spoke to Patrice Roy, my colleague who works on the French side. They did an interview with the head of corporate communications, Christophe Annabelle. He reiterated that Rousseau's French was not good enough for him to speak about a serious subject matter like this. He apologizes for the strong emotions it has caused, says the airline is sorry, says the alternative was to just not send a video at all because he's really just not competent enough in French to do it. He can't read off a teleprompter. He was asked, can he not just read a few lines off the teleprompter? This guy is telling Radio Canada that no, he can't even read the words that are on the screen. So his French is so poor, I guess, that he really can't even try, right? I mean, it would sound ridiculous, I guess, is what they're relaying to us in this interview. Sherelle, what are your thoughts on this? So, really, they're apologizing, but hey, it's just not happening. French is not going to work for this guy, apparently.
Yeah, that's. I don't know if that's going to bring people a lot of comfort and assuage any, bad feelings people have about this. It's been years since he was first rapped on the knuckles. He said he was doing French training. In the immediate aftermath, he said he was meeting with tutors every morning or every week, and so I do think. I mean, I don't know. I do think there still would have been a bit of an uproar and a bit of a furor had he, come out and stumbled through some of it. Perhaps it would not have been to the degree that it is that we're seeing right now. Maybe the Official Languages Committee might have put off the summoning for a little while in the wake of the tragedy. I mean, we do see and we do hear people get upset and irate when, for example, the Governor General, who does speak 2 languages, but one of them is not French, and she's explained her reasons for that and said she's learning. But in her prepared remarks, she does make an attempt,
Yeah.
and I don't think anyone would say that it's
fluent.
great or fluent or flawless.
No.
But there is that attempt, and people still do get a little irate about the fact that after all these years she can't do better. I do think that there could have been that attempt made, and for the reasons that the others have.
Quick final word, Tim.
Yeah, I was just going to say, look, I believe I read, it's been 43 years, thankfully, although very sad what happened, that there's been a major safety incident at Air Canada. I think for those of us who travel, that becomes the number one priority first. And you want to see the leader out there talking to that. It is clear Mr. Rousseau has deficiencies, but let's not turn his competency into whether or not he clearly made a mistake. He should have tried some French in that video. But let's not take the man down without looking at the thing he's supposed to do for all of us, run an airline well. And believe me, I could spend an hour here complaining about Air Canada, as I'm sure everybody else can. But I think this is really being overblown, and we're missing the important parts here.
Amanda, is Tim right on that?
No.
You tried.
I think Tim's right a lot of the time, but I think in this case, I mean, this was a fail. This is a crisis fail too. He made the crisis worse. And when we talk about crisis 101, the first thing you don't want to do is make the crisis worse, which he did. The response that came from Air Canada makes the crisis worse. Of course, this is about something more important. Of course, we should be, reflecting on the family and how they're feeling. But part of it is the way that Jordan described it. They required a message, that Francophones required a message in the other official language. And I have serious concerns about his competency that he can't scramble together a line in a pre-recorded video. Like, that to me feels worse. Their statement, their apology, and the fact that they're saying that he just couldn't make it happen feels worse to me than the fact that he didn't do it in the first place. So I just think that this is a pile-on of a number of things gone wrong. They need some communications help.
Yeah, Jordan, just quickly, the question to Roy was, Rousseau can't even read a few lines off a teleprompter, and the response from Air Canada was no.
That's bad. That's pretty rough. And I have to say, I mean, I think we've all worked in political spaces with politicians who don't have any French, but typically, even in that circumstance, with some coaching, somebody can usually get through something pre-recorded.
Lines. Yeah.
So I find that to charitably, I'll say, I find that to be a very surprising answer.
Yeah.
I think, look, the proof that this is a problem is in the fact that we are talking about this, and that we're not talking about what happened. We're not talking about the impact of this tragedy. We are talking about the language in which a message was not delivered.
Yeah, you're so right.
And so I think that means that it is de facto a problem.
Yeah.
That they are going to have to deal with, and they're going to have to deal with it like their crisis comms of their crisis comms is not even very good.
Yeah.
So
Need some work.
Amanda and I are available. Call
They
us.
need
you
your
go.
guys' help. Yeah.
Call us.
Yeah. Ghostbusters, but comms version. That's what they need. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. All right, let's leave it there. That was a really good discussion, guys. Thank you so much. Amanda Alvaro, Jordan Likeness, Tim Powers, and Sherelle Evelyn. Nice to see you all.